Go ahead. And you're live now.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to our fourth broadcast on Streetsblog Live, our using the modern technology of Google and YouTube to bring you a discussion series. We'll be doing a series throughout the summer this year, thanks to the work of Matt, who I believe you see in your lower right-hand corner, waving at the moment, covering various issues. The obvious starter right now, given the time of year and the year that we're in, is the discussion of what we expect to see out of the new administration from Eric Garcetti. And before we get fully into the conversation, which will feature Mark Valianatos, professor at Occidental College, also with the UEPI program there, and Eric Bruins from the Los Angeles County Bike Coalition will be joining us probably before the end of the video. And then we'll talk about what we expect, hopes and fears for the new administration. So if you're ready, Matt, let's roll the video.
All right, I'm going for it.
Behind that gate, still a whole bunch of oil. Like oil was first discovered in LA here. You should do an interview with me about just this little place. Want to do a quick story on like the transformation of this? Sure. Let's do it. Come on, it's a good story. It's a good story. First, I want to have a great board, so the appointments that I will make on the Metro board will represent the city. I'd like to have transit writers who are on that board. I'd like to see people who are committed to really expanding a great public transportation infrastructure. Well, I would love to not only keep them where they are or roll them back, but we have to grow our economy to achieve that. And so my main point in this race is to vote for somebody who has a proven track record of adding jobs in the midst of recession, of having more businesses start in his district in the midst of a recession than anywhere else. Those are the sorts of things that we can do to make sure that Metro has the resources to make that possible. But I've already pledged, for instance, with community college students to have reduced fares for them to be able to get to and from school. And it's certainly my outlook that we should make this as affordable as possible to as many people as possible. Strong supporter of busways and having dedicated lanes, and I'd love to see that in other parts of the city. I'd like to see it in San Fernando Valley, East San Fernando Valley, and maybe along Van Nuys Boulevard or some of the main arterial corridors in the valley. I'd like to see it also in other parts of the city where the dense population allows that to occur. Oh, I'm so proud that Los Angeles was chosen as bronze for its bikeability, and that we've put such an emphasis now on not only a master plan and ciclovia and all these other things, but that we are positioned to not only get silver, but I hope one day gold. Los Angeles should be one of the most bikeable cities in the country, but it starts with safety for bicyclists, first and foremost. Looking at other ways to add hardscape to actually protect bicyclists, getting the state law passed that would have a safe passing distance, and making sure that we put those bikeways down. Well, I'm very proud of having pioneered, pedestrian-oriented transit work and transportation work. Our Department of Transportation didn't even have anybody who was tasked with looking at pedestrian safety and pedestrian issues, even though 20% of our trips are by foot. So last year I put through a motion, and this year we've hired our first pedestrian coordinator in the city's history. Very proud to have done that and to work on that, work with, a lot of people, LA Walks and others who for years have said it's time for us to make this a walkable city. I think we have the worst of both worlds here in Los Angeles right now. In projects that are embraced by a community, it still takes way too long for them to get done. And projects that aren't embraced by a neighborhood, oftentimes nobody knows how to track them or to speak out and be heard to make them better, or in some cases to make sure they don't happen. Updating our zoning and our planning code will allow us to actually do both better.
All right, let me turn my volume back up. All right, so I think when we talked to Eric, and one of the things that we saw when we did our follow-up questionnaire with him later, one that, for the record, Wendy didn't fill out the follow-up questionnaire, a lot of his answers seem to be broader, vaguer types of things. There's Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Eric Bruins with the Bike Coalition just joining us, and you can see Mark and Matt and me still here. So as we move forward with the discussion of what we're talking about, what we hope to see for Eric, I think the first thing is, do you guys mind telling us if you voted for him or not, just so the people have an idea of whether or not we're Garcetti supporters here? I'll tell you I did. But it was a last minute decision for me. I was originally a Wendy supporter, and as the campaign moved on, I switched. Again, it's okay if you guys don't want to.
I'm happy to say I did. I voted for him.
Oh,
I'm with you.
no, that's fine. So I think let's start off with just a quick 2 minutes. What do we think we're going to see from Eric Garcetti in the next 4 years as it relates to livable streets? Since you just joined us, why don't we start with Eric?
I think that he has the potential to he's really good at storytelling, and I think that that's what's kind of been missing. And so he can really create the whole narrative arc for livable streets, and then the challenge for us is going to be making sure that that translates down at the community level into projects and actual dollars flowing into the types of things we care about.
Okay, Mark?
Well, I'm interested that he chose the theme Back to Basics to sort of launch his transition. And so the challenge is, I think that Back to Basics doesn't become back to, just repairing potholes and bad streets. It becomes changing what the definition of basics is to be a complete street, a safe street, a street that's good for transit bikes, walking, and sometimes cars. But his past record would suggest that the mayor would want to go in that direction.
Do you see any specific challenges regionally? I know, Eric, that there's been a lot of concerns recently about bike plan implementation. Do you expect to see any changes in how the tenor of the debate's been on that topic over the past couple of months for how we're going forward, or do you think that's a level that's the mayor's not really going to get into?
It'll be interesting to see. I think our previous mayor really identified himself with the bike movement and kind of had this, he had the summit, he made all these promises, and I think that right now the new mayor doesn't have that identification with the issue, but he also doesn't have any baggage associated with that, so he's not the bike mayor. And it'll be interesting to see to what extent he wants to embrace biking as part of this broader livable streets thing, or whether he doesn't necessarily identify with that specific issue, and we have to really reframe it in the bigger conversation.
He's also talked about a monthly ciclovia. You think we're going to see that in 4 years?
Well, if Metro keeps putting up money, then who knows? Sky's the limit.
How about, Mark, are there any local issues that you've been covering that you expect to see that maybe a change in the way it's been being talked about under a Mayor Garcetti than a Mayor Villaraigosa? And do you expect to see a good change or a bad change under that thing, under any new verbiage?
Well, I think that Villaraigosa had a focus on he started out with a focus on the big infrastructure projects, the light rail in particular, and extension of the subway, which is, of course, great for the region. And now the challenge is to fill in the gaps around the stations, figure out what the land use is going to be near the new stations, how to get the last mile connections to the new transit lines and improved bus lines. And so hopefully the mayor's background as someone who works closely with his local community, his council district, can help make sure that's a smooth process and we get the kind of changes we need to allow the new system to live up to its potential. I think because he comes from the council, he'll hopefully recognize that there's an advantage to having a lot of local input on projects, but not getting bogged down and having any certain stakeholder be able to block an important new bike lane, new train station, whatever. And if you can swing that balance in a city like LA, I think good things will happen.
Now, one of the advantages of doing this discussion with the two of you is each of you provided one of the questions when we did do our questionnaire, our video series for the candidates. Oh, here, I'm doing my hair while I'm on video. Eric, your question was on separated bike lanes and the need to start doing more and more of them throughout the city. What do you think? Is this something that we're going to see more of? We seem to be going maybe the other way with some of the debate over Spring Street.
Well, I mean, but Spring Street isn't even a protected bike lane, right? So I think we've really set a very high bar for ourselves in terms of quantity, and it's really time to pivot towards quality. We need a basic network that's citywide, and when we see the first year and 2 years of bike plan projects, that really does get us that basic mode share enabling network of you can get from point A to point B, but you can't necessarily get there comfortably, and that's really the shift that needs to happen. I think we need to be, and it goes into the broader narrative about neighborhoods and safe streets and livable streets, where we really need to focus on I get from my place, where I live, to my school or my kids' school, and how do I get to the store, and those types of small local trips on really high quality infrastructure, so that you can get individual neighborhoods to buy into it at that level, and that allows you to work in the places that want this stuff and kind of sidestep the places that don't. If a certain community is really scared of bikes and doesn't want to engage, we can do it in the neighboring community, and then they get a watch and say, why is that community so much better than ours? And it's like, oh, well, now maybe we want to come on board.
And Mark, your question was for candidate Garcetti was about zoning code changes and how the city is adopting its first zoning code changes since literally World War II. What did you think of what he's had to say so far on this, and where do you think, what kind of leadership should we hope to see from him as the city moves forward with these changes? Moves forward with, I should say, changing the way we do zoning.
Well, there's a saying that the best transportation plan is actually a good land use plan, so that you can live close to where you need to go. So there's enough kind of proximity to allow people to bike if they want to in their daily lives, to walk more, to be close to transit. And so Los Angeles, we have a long way to go to allow people to sort of have stuff near them, close enough to them that we can have a more sustainable way of getting around. And I've been writing about this on Streetsblog, thanks to your permitting me to do so. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening already that the city and Metro are doing around new train stations. There is this opportunity, the zoning code, the mobility element and health element of the general plan are being discussed right now as well. So there's an amazing opportunity out there, and I just hope the mayor reaches for it. The planning department, the planning commission, the past planning commission have set some good stuff into action. So he just needs to Garcetti said he can let that go forward, and then figure out a couple of priorities for himself and embrace them and showcase them, pilot them, and as was discussed, tell stories about how to make the city better for everyone.
Well, one of the things that we've noticed is it seems that a lot of the pilot projects seem to happen in the same area. Jose Huizar's district has, the parklets and both the green bike lanes, and Garcetti's district has the polka dot park and has the first Sharrows in the city. What kind of pilot projects would you want to see the city start moving on? This, we'll start with Mark, to sort of demonstrate what they could do, and where should we be doing it besides downtown and Boyle Heights?
Well, I mean, one thing I'm really, two things I'm really excited about. One is bus rapid transit on the boulevards, and this is already happening in the first small stretch of Wilshire. So a question might be, what is another heavily traveled bus corridor that's in a low-income area where people are transit dependent in East LA or South LA or part of the Valley, and do an accelerated pilot of a BRT in that area? That would be a really great thing. And then I also think that a lot of the places in LA where it's hardest to get access to food, get access to job opportunities, are actually in parts of the city that lack kind of good commercial districts. They're mainly residential, like parts of South Los Angeles, where there's a lot of residential neighborhoods, but not a lot of businesses there. And I think you should change the zoning to allow people to start more businesses actually in residential neighborhoods, have cafes there, coffee shops, small businesses. And so I would want a pilot project to allow sort of more home businesses and neighborhoods serving retail in places where most people don't have cars, but they still need to get to places to get food, to get jobs, to get other services.
Yeah, I know. I sort of brag that my family and I picked where we live. There I go with my hair again. I got to get more professional. But I always joke that we sort of picked where we live so that we could pick the place where we could walk